Jeffrey, Delano, and Leon met at McKinley High School in the shadows of the nation's capital. They united over skateboarding, video games, and a fascination with Japanese weaponry.
Talk to me about each one.
Jeffrey is a caring person, will help anybody, very smart, love his family, loved his friends.
What about Delano?
Delano was quiet, kind of withdrawn, stayed to himself mostly. Then Leon was the wild, crazy one. If he didn't get his way, he would be like a little kid having a tantrum.
Denise Washington is Jeffrey's mother, but she says she considered Leon and Delano part of her family.
I've been in each one of those houses. I knew their parents.
You took these boys on trips before.
Yes, parks, outings, ski trips, beaches.
So when Jeffrey asks his mom if the pack can move into a house his family owns after graduation, Denise agrees.
Do you think it was a good idea?
Yes.
Why?
We can keep a closer eye on the boys.
So Jeffrey was playing the role of landlord.
Yes.
So this little white brick row house morphs into the wolf's den.
What went on inside the house seemed to stay inside the house.
Keith Alexander, who covered the story for the Washington Post, says the house was a real-life Neverland, and the pack was living a Peter Pan fantasy.
This is a place where adults, grown men, never grew up.
Was the house kept up?
Many people who stayed at that house said it was a frat house.
The house becomes a revolving door for girls and all-night parties, one of them captured in this home video. Soon, neighbors begin to complain about the noise and the overwhelming smell of marijuana.
Did you stop by the house frequently?
In the beginning I did, but then it started getting a little out of control.
Because it was a party house.
Yes.
Eventually, no one is taking care of the house or paying the bills.
They were struggling with keeping the utilities on. So there were times when the electricity wasn't on, the water wasn't on. Jeffrey Neal was frustrated and angry and enraged about what was going on in the house.
Tensions begin to run high in the wolf's den, and the pack, once unbreakable, is now starting to turn on each other.
Did you ever notice any violence or anger inside the home between any of the men?
Just between Jeffrey and Leon, mostly.
Who was the aggressor?
I would have to say Leon.
Kalichi Anarji was friends with all three of the men and says he warned Jeffrey that he needed to fix the problem.
From what I was seeing in the house, it was something bound to happen.
As the mess mounts and the bills pile up, Leon suffers a mental breakdown and is briefly hospitalized. He is diagnosed with psychosis.
Those mental breakdowns caused issues within the home and issues with Jeffrey Neal and issues with Delano.
When Leon is released from the hospital, he returns to the wolf's den, but there's something different about him. Jeffrey says he wanders around the house naked, just staring out the window into the backyard. Denise says his behavior turns almost rabid.
Leon wrote a book?
Yes. That had in there how he was going to kill his parents, how he was going to kill his friends.
As a mom, were you in fear for your son's safety?
We knew Leon had mental issues, and we just left it alone because Jeffrey said that he would, try to help him take care of it.
But soon, even Jeffrey can't keep the peace. Scuffles between the one-time best friends escalates into full-blown brawls. Denise says one night, Leon attacks Jeffrey while he's sleeping, kicking him violently and repeatedly in the groin. And the violence only escalates. Days later, Leon pulls a razor-sharp ninja blade on Jeffrey.
He got cut and almost cut off part of his hand, and I had to take him to the hospital to get stitches.
So there were some pretty serious incidents.
Yes.
The pack is now completely divided. It's every man for himself. And without warning, Delano Wingfield suddenly disappears from the den.
People were looking for him.
Yes. My brother and my son had told me that there had been notes put up on the door saying, please give us a call, have you seen Delano?
Then a few weeks later, Delano's grandmother receives a bizarre text saying he's heading to Europe. His family is very suspicious because Delano doesn't have any money.
Was Delano ever reported missing?
Delano's grandmother went to the house and confronted Jeffrey Neal and said, I haven't seen my grandson. Do you know where he is? And Jeffrey Neal said, no, no, ma'am, I don't know where he is. And she said, I'm going to give him a couple of days, and then if I don't hear from him, I'm going to report him missing.
The pack is now down to 2 lone alpha wolves, both at each other's throat. Days later, the little row house goes eerily quiet.
It was so bizarre. It was just so bizarre. Like, what was going on in that house?
Jeffrey's family is wondering that too. So on a sweltering hot day in June, his 2 uncles head to the little white brick house. But when they get there, something stops them in their tracks.
One of the uncles notices a smell, and he goes up into the attic.
What does he find?
Something evil is happening inside this little white row house outside Washington, D.C.
There was a lot more going on than just mere roommates.
The Wolfpack, Delano Wingfield, Leon Young, and Jeffrey Neal. One by one, they're disappearing.
Something went horribly wrong.
Delano texts his family he's heading to Europe. Leon, who's been suffering from a mental breakdown, is nowhere to be found. Then, Jeffrey Neal vanishes.
And I don't think we will ever know what happened.
To help solve the mystery, Jeffrey's uncles go check on the little white brick house. The minute they step inside, they know something horrible happened up in the attic.
So he grabbed a ladder to climb into the attic, which is a really tight attic.
And once they squeeze inside,
They discovered the decomposing body of Leon Young.
Leon's been brutally murdered.
A plastic bag over his head, completely nude.
Leon had been bludgeoned to death with a rusty hammer, hit so hard, part of his skull is actually caved in.
What was your reaction?
I didn't know. I was just dumbfounded. So they asked me to come down to the police station and bring my son, and that's what I did.
Just days before Leon's body was found, Jeffrey had resurfaced and moved back in with his mom. But now he's on the hot seat with detectives.
I'm glad you guys bought your new pass, because I got a story for you.
You do? I was a good story.
No, it's not a good story.
No, it's not a good story. It's a shocking and horrifying story.
Yeah, so I'm your guy, basically.
Jeffrey confesses, telling detectives they are looking at Leon Young's killer.
I hit him with the hammer, and he didn't go down from the first blow, but the first blow did make him bleed. And I hit him again, and then he fell right on his floor. If you check his room, you should see blood splatter.
Are you sure you only hit him 2 times?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I only hit him 2 times.
Jeffrey says he hit his best friend in the head 2 times and then put Leon's lifeless body in the attic.
So I shook him. Nothing. He made a little grumble, and I completely freaked out. I put the ladder up, put his body in the attic.
How did you get his body into the attic?
I picked him up. He's small.
Did you place anything on him? On his feet, hands, leg,
The only
head?
thing I did try to cover his head up to stop the bleeding with a plastic bag, but then that didn't work. So I just tied his head with the plastic bag and just left it up there too.
A killer confession seems like easy work for the detectives until Jeffrey hits them with this.
I know I'm going to jail for this, but I'm kind of hoping that my sentence won't be too bad because of self-defense.
That's right. Jeffrey says he had to kill Leon because Leon was about to kill him.
He was standing in front of the window, looking out the window at his car with his knife in his hand, just shaking his knife. I walked in his room, asked him if he was all right, and he attacked me with the knife. I backed up, but he got my hand a little bit, not much.
You see? What's it?
On my thumb and my finger.
Okay.
So he continued to attack me with the knife, and as I backed up, I reached on the table. It was a hammer on the table, and swung it at him, hit him in the head.
But Jeffrey's not done with his story. He says before Leon attacked him, he made a chilling confession of his own.
And he said to me, I killed Delano. He didn't say anything else to me, but I killed Delano.
Neil said that Leon Young came at him, said, look, I just killed Wingfield, and I can do the same thing to you.
That's what he said. I don't know if it's... I hope it isn't true.
Remember, Leon had mental problems and viciously attacked Jeffrey before, repeatedly kicking him in the groin. So detectives started to think Jeffrey's crazy story of self-defense may not be all that crazy.
I would rather go to jail than be dead on my floor right now.
Now cops wonder if Leon may have told Jeffrey where he buried Delano's body.
But he didn't mention where Delano is or anything like that?
No, he didn't mention where Delano is or anything.
Despite his confession, with Jeffrey's claim of killing Leon in self-defense, detectives released Jeffrey.
They finally come out and they bring my son to me. And I said, well, if it's anything he's done, what are y'all gonna do? So if you're gonna arrest us, arrest us. If not, let us go. So they let us go.
Delano had been reported missing by his grandmother weeks ago, so cops head to this little white brick house looking for clues.
Police came back out to this house a second time, and they arrived with cadaver dogs. Those dogs searched the inside of the house and the outside of the property, and they would make another gruesome discovery.
This cadaver dog hits on a spot in the backyard.
Right.
Buried in a shallow grave under a pile of bricks, they find Delano Wingfield's decomposed body. So is Jeffrey now off the hook? Not so fast. 2 members of the Wolfpack are dead, and they were both killed the same way.
One man was killed, struck repeatedly with a hammer. Another man was killed, struck repeatedly with a hammer. One man's body was completely new when it was found. Another man's body was found completely new.
At one time, they were blood brothers who called themselves the Wolfpack. Now, Jeffrey Neal is the lone wolf who says it was kill or be killed.
And he turned to me like this, and he put the knife like this.
In this police interrogation, Jeffrey is acting out what he claims is the rage of Leon Young. He says his best friend threatened to kill him after confessing to murdering his other best friend, Delano Wingfield. Jeffrey says he had no choice. He was in a fight for his life.
I took the hammer and hit him like that.
The first time you hit it, did you see blood splatter?
The first time I hit him, I saw a blood spot in his head. The second time I hit him, I saw the hammer go in his head.
It was 2 times?
Pretty sure it was 2 times.
Jeffrey Neal admitted to killing Leon Young. Jeffrey Neal said that it was self-defense.
Even though Jeffrey confessed to killing Leon, police let Jeffrey go free, at least for now.
If you guys hear anything about Delano, I would like to know too.
It doesn't take long. 2 days later, investigators, with the help of cadaver dogs, discover Delano's body. He's buried in a shallow grave just behind the house the Wolfpack used to share. Cops are stunned. It looks like a copycat killing.
Wingfield was struck multiple times with a hammer. Wingfield's body was also nude, just like Young's.
When you heard Delano's body was found and that he was murdered in the same exact way, what did you think?
I had to question myself and wonder about my son.
You had that honest conversation with yourself.
Yes, but he said, Mom, I did not kill Delano. He said, I did kill Leon Young, but he said Leon was trying to kill me.
After a sweep of the house, cops find 2 different hammers. One hammer is covered in both Leon and Jeffrey's blood. The second hammer only has Delano's blood on it. Jeffrey's story to the cops seems to be lining up.
None of my son's DNA was on Delano's body, ground, or the instrument that took Delano Wingfield's life.
Then the medical examiner's report comes in. It's not good news for Jeffrey. Delano's blood was all over Jeffrey's bedroom, and Leon was hit a lot more than just 2 times with a hammer.
The autopsy showed Leon Young was struck more than 20 times, and that is where it became much more than just self-defense.
Each of the 26 hits described as full body swings.
That's somebody who was going back and forth with a hammer. That's rage.
That's rage.
That's rage. What caused so much rage for these high school friends?
And it's so personal.
And it's personal. And that's what's troubling. So we just don't know what caused that.
Cops still don't have a motive, but the eerie similarities of the murders are enough for the DC cops to charge Jeffrey Neal with both of the killings.
What was Jeffrey's reaction when they put handcuffs on him?
Nothing, he just sat there.
And everybody needed to sit down when Jeffrey Neal revealed the motive behind the murders. The Wolfpack had become more than just a band of brothers. They had become a den of lovers.
And that friendship did grow into something more, something romantic.
Correct. Jeffrey Neal was having a relationship with Wingfield as well as Leon Young.
Jeffrey confesses the Wolfpack had been closet lovers for years, claiming the trouble all started when the dynamic of the secret threesome changed. Jeffrey recently switched his romantic affections mostly to Delano, and when Leon found out he was being dumped, he exploded into a jilted lover's jealous rage.
So the people who classify this as a love triangle gone wrong, what do you say?
It was a love triangle gone wrong.
Did you know your son's relationship with Leon and Delano had went from a friendship to maybe love?
Yes, I know about it.
And did you know that that could be complicated for all three of these men,
Yes,
especially living in the same home?
yes.
Did you give your son advice?
No, he was 21. That was his love affair, not mine. But I also instructed him, you need to use caution. You know, you're treading on kind of weird water.
The wild claims of sexcapades between Jeffrey and his childhood best friends shocked the city.
What really came out was that these men were having sexual intercourse with each other unbeknownst to a lot of people outside the house. Because a lot of these guys had girlfriends. And so, but what went on inside the house seemed to stay inside the house. Outside the house, they carried on as friends, as heterosexual friends who just came together and were just pure platonic roommates. But according to Jeffrey Neal, inside the house, there was a lot more going on than just mere roommates.
Then the prosecution comes back with what some call another smoking gun. It centers around this gruesome crime scene photo of Delano Wingfield in his grave, wearing socks. When Jeffrey confessed to killing Leon Young and hiding his body in the attic, he told detectives Leon was naked, except for his socks. Here's the problem. Leon wasn't wearing socks. Prosecutors say Jeffrey confused his two murder victims. The jury finds Jeffrey Neal to be a cold-blooded killer who murdered his two best friends. He's convicted and sentenced to 60 years behind bars.
Today, in a Crime Watch Daily exclusive, Neal is talking to me about what he says really happened that June day.
Are you a monster?
I damn sure don't feel like one.
Were you in fear for your life?
Terrified. Especially considering the previous stab wound that he had given me a year and a half back.
Jeffrey Neal is talking to me over the telephone from Big Sandy Prison in Inez, Kentucky.
So, Leon and Delano are both killed with a hammer. Can you understand why that looks so bad for you?
I understand completely why it looks extremely bad for me.
What do you think the motive for Leon killing Delano would be? Was it a love triangle gone bad?
I think that the love triangle was a very strong possibility, but truthfully, I would just be throwing darts at a board with a blindfold if I told you I knew.
But some now question if this is all just a part of Jeffrey Neal's defense strategy.
It's been reported that this may have been possibly a love triangle that went wrong. Is that accurate?
Well, it depends on who you ask. That's what's so unusual about this case, right? Only one who seems to really know about this love triangle is Jeffrey Neal. No one had any confirmation that there was anything going on sexually. Again, the only one who really seemed to know about that is the one survivor, and that's Jeffrey Neal.
Neal still maintains he did not kill Delano Wingfield.
But you were romantically linked to both of them, correct?
Correct.
And in a shocking revelation, Jeffrey tells me he killed the man he actually loved.
Did you love both of these men?
I was in love with Leon.
You were.
I was never in love with Delano.
As for the 26 full body swings to Leon, Jeffrey says he remembers hitting him more times, but he was trying to downplay the murder to detectives.
I had no idea the exact number of times I hit him.
Do you think you should be behind bars for Leon's death?
Truthfully, I do. Because I feel like my action could have been different. I don't feel like I should be behind bars for first-degree murder.
What do you want people to know about you?
I'm not a guilty man when it comes to Delano Wingfield. I did not kill that man. That man was my brother. I loved him like a brother.
Jeffrey Neal wants to appeal his conviction.
What is your hope for your future?
I hope I get a new trial. And I hope at this new trial, the jury really pays attention to the DNA evidence.
And Denise, who considered herself a mother to all the boys in the Wolfpack, once felt she had 3 sons, and now she has none.
Losing these kids, I mean, this had to take a piece of your heart.
And I still do. I have my moments still.
And losing your son.
And I still have my moments with that.
Do you believe in your heart Jeffrey is innocent?
Yes, I do.
What's next for you?
Try to fight for my son. I'm going to do everything I can to help my son.